Alright guys, hello. I've got a question for you. And note, I'm still quite sick, so if I sound a little weird in this video, that's why. But anyway, I've got a question for you. You walk into a shopping mall, and you park your car in the garage, and you buy your groceries, and you're done, and you walk out and back to your car, and in the way there's a bunch of people. And you walk over to your car up to the second floor, there's no one there, you walk up to your car, you're fine, and you're putting your groceries in your trunk, and a guy walks past you, and as he's walking past you, this goes into your kidney. How do you stop that? All these videos on self-defense with the gun, self-defense with the knife, combat techniques, none of that works against this. See, all these videos I've been making about knife defense have been, in my opinion, very important to say, but this video is easily the most important thing I could ever tell you, and this is how to never get mugged or raped. I will go on about rape in another video in the first place. Now, a quick side note on the issue of rape. I've taught self-defense courses unofficially a few times when I was in Marine Corps physical rehab. What we have there is about 108 people at any given time, all broken in one way or another, and all bored out of their minds. They've been there for weeks on weeks. And my sergeant asked me to give them all sorts of, and he asked a couple other guys with me to give them all sorts of speeches to keep them entertained. So we discussed zombie apocalypses, we discussed superheroes, and we also did some very serious talks. And my sergeant apparently thought that I was competent enough to teach these bored Marines some important shit about self-defense, and I did, and it went over very well, and we tested them, and we talked about them, and everything I tell you about knife defense, by the way, a lot of it came from that time, where we discussed it, and we actually got up with training knives, and we tested all that shit, and that's how I've come to my conclusions about knife defense that I have today, because out of a platoon full of 108 Marines, some injured, most of them injured, yes, but out of 108 people, the fact that I could effectively stab and kill all but 2 of them in a single hour of training, and then we carried on and did that with healthy Marines, and the results were just about the same. I'm bringing up rape because I want to do a video on how to avoid rape and how rape works as well. The problem is it's a very, very, very goddamn difficult subject to talk about in this climate. There's feminism, there's a lot of rape hysteria, there's a lot of people very ready to accuse you of being a rape apologist. And so the one time I did try and talk about rape to a bunch of females on base, it did not go over very well. And the reason for that, I'm going to get this out of the way now, is everything I tell you right now in this video about avoiding crime and staying safe is I'm telling you what is. I'm not telling you what ought to be. I'm not telling you what's right or what's wrong or what's moral or immoral, what should be. All I'm telling you is the physics of how to avoid being mugged, robbed, or raped. So if you are offended by it, I am not trying to make a statement that is offensive. I mean, if you're offended by what I say next, it's like being offended at a piano falling out of a window onto your head. The piano doesn't care. All I'm telling you is to get out of the way. If you're going to be feeling that the piano has no right to fall on your head, tell that to the piano. It'll still kill you anyway. So let's get to it. This is about how to avoid crime, and it's very easy. I haven't been attacked by anybody or mugged since I was 16 because I've started using these techniques. It's something every self-defense teacher needs to talk about, but they very rarely do. So first things first, all you need to do is understand what crime is, and it's a process. It is a very predictable process. Most attacks, muggings, and robberies will work in the same way. There is an established process to how experienced criminals will go at it. Once you know this process, it's very easy for you to interrupt it, to prevent it from happening. So here's the golden rule. I mean, you can ignore the rest of the video, you can stop the video right after I say this, and if you keep this in mind, you'll be fine. In order for somebody to attack you, you have to be in a vulnerable position. You have to be in a location, in a state that allows them to attack you. Nobody can mug the President of the United States. He's not in a vulnerable situation. If you don't put yourself into vulnerable situations, you will be fine. That's it. That's the golden rule. So, we could get to the details now. What constitutes vulnerability? Step one is location. This is what some other instructors have called fringe areas, and I picked up the term from them. I think that a very good instructor is, I think his name was Mark McYoung. I may be wrong about that, but I listened to the guy a long time ago. He really does know his stuff, and what he talks about are fringe areas, and what they are is any area where you are alone, and it will take you at least a good 20 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute to get to a crowded place, to a safe place with cameras and people and lights. That's back alleys, that's your empty parking lots, that's stairways inside of buildings. So all you need to do is, first off, don't go into fringe areas. Now, obviously there's times where you will anyway, like a parking lot, and it's empty. So step two, when you do have to go into a fringe area, be alert. Keep your head on a swivel. I mean, if you're familiar with the Cooper's color codes of awareness, look them up. It's self-defense states of awareness. There's a freaking white, yellow, orange, red, gray, and black. So always be in condition yellow. Always be aware of your surroundings. You enter an empty parking lot. Okay, there's my car. You look around. There's nobody here. Okay, I'm safe. Walk on. Keep looking. There's nobody here. I'm good. I'm out. And then you can relax and drop your awareness down. Let's say you do see somebody. Okay, there's a lady walking to a car. Not a threat. There's a guy standing over there just chilling against a pillar. Now that's a mark. Why? You're in a parking lot. That's the rule about fringe areas, by the way. The thing about fringe areas is there's no reason for anybody to be in them. The general rule is that they're transition areas, stairwells, parking lots, alleys. They're places you move through. They're not places you hang around in. I mean, there's exceptions always. Some teenager might sit down on a staircase and play a game, but in general, if a person's sitting in an abandoned parking lot just standing there and looking around and waiting, either he's waiting for a ride or he has some other ulterior reason. Either way, that's a mark. You mark them in your vision. You keep an eye on it. Now, what I recommend hardcore out, it's going to sound a little paranoid, but if you see something suspicious like that, let's say you see two guys leaning against a pillar just looking left and right, and you don't like the look of them, turn around and walk out. It's that simple. You walk away from the situation. You could go to your car later. If you do see somebody that you do mark, but you don't think they're a real threat, and you walk in, keep paying attention. If he's still leaning by the pillar all the way by, and you walk past him from a distance and you're all the way to your car and he's still there, it's not a threat. He's either waiting for somebody else, or he's hanging out, or he just doesn't want to freaking attack you. But let's say you walk to your car, and those two guys who are leaning against the wall now start walking after you. I don't mean like it's like, oh, they step in line behind you, but they just start moving. And not even at your direction necessarily. Now it's time to get a little bit suspicious. You walk past them right at that moment when they're hanging out in an empty garage doing nothing, start moving. Okay, where are they moving? Did they just split up? If they just split up and are moving alongside, that's like 100% get the fuck out now. That's to turn away from the car even and walk the fuck out. So that's the basis of fringe areas. You avoid fringe areas, you will never ever 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 get attacked short of the random guy jumps out of bush. And let's be frank, the odds of that are like zero. Note, this does not address store robberies or home invasions. This is just about muggings and crime out in the street. So that's fringe areas aside. What about the process of crime? The thing about criminals is they want easy takes. They want to take you out quickly, efficiently, with as little risk to themselves and as little time necessary. So they do pick their targets. They absolutely pick their targets. Part of that is if you look like you have the money, but more importantly, if you look like you will be easy to take out. And one of the most easiest ways to identify an easy target is somebody who's not paying attention, somebody who has absolutely no awareness. And, I mean, if you see somebody walking down, looking at their cell phone on the ground with their earphones in, listening to music, yeah, I think I could probably easily rob you. You're not even going to see me coming until I've got this to your freaking neck. Be aware. Pay attention. criminals ignore people who look like they can see you coming. They don't need that. They don't need that grief. And it gets a little bit half and half on this next issue, and that's if you look weak. And I've always found this to be kind of a difficult thing to do, because we're talking about your self-esteem, we're talking about your posture, we're talking about the way you walk. There's not a whole lot you could do to focus on that other than just gaining more confidence yourself. Because if you try and walk like you're tough, or you try and strut, it's not going to look right. And criminals who pay attention to the way people walk for a living will notice that it's just different. All you can do is just walk normally, pay attention, and with your own confidence, that will reflect in your walk. Now, once the process of crime actually starts, once they pick a target, that's the first step. They will test the target. Very usually, they will test it, and this is often called the interviewing phase. They will interview the intended target, and it's something as simple as asking you for a cigarette, asking you for the time. And all they're doing is testing to see how you respond and how aware you are. If I'm a criminal and I want to take you down, and I walk up to you and I ask you for a cigarette, it's not about the cigarette. I want to see how you react. And if you do this, if you're like, you don't even look up at me, and you're just like, yeah, cigarette, you're not paying the slightest bit of attention. If you look up and you notice, and you look around and you pay attention, you notice what's going on, they'll take that into account, especially if you notice their buddy standing right behind you. Now, there's different kinds of interviews, too. There's very aggressive ones where they ask you for a dollar or a cigarette or the time. And when you give it to them, they ask for more, and they very quickly become very, very, very aggressive. This is designed to throw you off your guard. The average person's state of mind, a guy asks me for smoke, and all of a sudden it's screaming in my face, we shut down. We're like, what the fuck? We don't know how to deal with this. That is pure victimhood right there. Because all they're doing is they're putting you under stress to see how you react to that stress. And if your reaction is, Jesus, you don't know what you're doing, they're like, okay, money. On the other hand, a guy starts screaming on your face, your immediate reaction is to get the fuck up, back off, create distance, look at them, pay attention, circle around, get the fuck out. They're just going to walk the fuck away at the same time. I mean, obviously these issues become a little subjective. Different criminals think differently. They have different standards, different psychologies. But in general, that kind of interview can and does happen. So I'm not saying be paranoid, and if a guy asks you for a coin or for a dollar, freak out. But if you're in a fringe area, just fucking know. I mean, I always sit outside my smoke shop. I'm always smoking and drinking there. People ask me for cigarettes all the fucking time. I'm never worried. I've got stores behind me. I'm in a public parking lot. There's a security guard right there. There's cameras over my head. That's normal interaction. When you're alone in a fringe area, you keep freaking walking. The answer is no. I look around. I see you. I see your buddy. I know what you are. Fuck off. That's pretty much it. That's the whole basis of avoiding crime. I mean, what you want to do is put yourself in the criminal's shoes. Imagine that you're looking for people to rob and start figuring out how would you do it? Who would you attack? And then avoid doing that yourself as the intended victim. I mean, it's a very, very good technique to put yourself in the shoes of a criminal. You start realizing what makes people look vulnerable. You start realizing what a vulnerable situation is. So the rule of thumb is, if you want to avoid randomly having this put to your back, then all you need to do is never give them an opportunity to do so in the first place. Don't make yourself a vulnerable target. Don't put yourself in a vulnerable situation. That is your responsibility. And this is where a lot of people get offended, when I place responsibility on the victim. Yes, I am placing responsibility on the victim. Not blame. I don't give a fuck about blame. I don't give a fuck about whose fault it was. But what you need to understand, if you want to survive, is that everything you do has a reaction. It has consequences. Everything will react from your actions. And if your actions put you in a position that leaves you vulnerable, and then you are attacked, you were responsible for putting yourself in that situation. That is what is. It's not what ought to be. Nobody deserves to be mugged. Nobody deserves to be shot. But if you walk into a dark alley at night and you see 3 guys sitting right there in the middle of it on either side being hooligans, and you walk right past them without saying anything or paying attention, and you get freaking mugged, you walked right into it. And that's your own responsibility. And you need to take account, and the reason I want people to start thinking of that as their responsibility is because I want people to start really focusing on the consequences of their actions. And again, I'm not saying consequences as in blame, I'm saying the physical consequences. If I walk onto a set of train tracks, the consequence of that is I'm now vulnerable to being hit by a train. You need to be aware of your positioning. You need to be aware of what you do that puts you in a vulnerable situation, and to avoid that. That's all there is to this. You follow these general tips, and no, do more research. I mean, I've only scratched the surface here. There is so much information on the process of crime, the psychology of crime, fringe areas, positioning, movement. There is so much out there. I've barely scratched the surface. Please do look it up. There's countless good books. I'm pretty sure it was Mark McYoung who I listened to. Definitely look him up. He's got a hell of a lot more books on the subject than I could ever talk about in a video. So please, stay safe. Get your head into the mindset of paying attention. This is not paranoia, this is awareness. Paranoia would be assuming everybody's trying to kill you. All you're doing is looking for the people who really can kill you, and then avoiding those situations. So again, get that mentality up, pay attention, stay safe, and don't be stupid. Thank you very much for giving me your time. Thank you very much for listening to what I have to say. Take care.